Welcome to yet another episode of the ConunDRUM podcast. I might be a bit biased since it is my podcast, but this is a great episode. I had the pleasure of speaking with Julie Aubé from Les Hey Babies just before she left to go on the first half of their tour into Quebec in support of their latest album, Boîte aux lettres. Now, Julie and I talk about Boîte aux lettres and how it's a concept album and just the idea on how the concept album came to be, which is a lost art. I think a lot of artists should really embrace the concept album since you can tell a story over a collection of songs versus the current state of what the music industry is with everything being so single serving. Julie shares some insight into the songwriting process, not only between her and Viviane and Catherine with Les Hey Babies, but also as a solo artist, since she does also have a solo music career going. She has one album out already and another one set to be released in 2022. So be on the lookout for that. I know I certainly am. There's also some great stories sprinkled in from her travels across Canada, the US, and overseas. And she also takes the crash questions. So it's just a lot of fun. It's a great conversation, so much more. So I don't want to dive too deep into what we talk about. Just listen to the episode or watch it. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Julie Aubé. I can hear you. It's a little low, but I can hear you.
Is this loud enough?
Oh yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Check 1,
Is
2.
it too loud?
No, that's fine.
We can adjust it.
Okay, anyway, c'est celui-ci là.
Okay.
Je sais sur tes headphones.
Okay, merci.
No problem.
All right. Thanks, Viv.
I didn't know she was going to be there. I could have had you both on.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Viviane. Ça, c'est ton verre de vin.
Veux-tu a refill?
This is yours.
You want a refill?
It's okay. I'll after. Yeah, I'm at Viv's house.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Okay, let me know if there's any issues.
Okay. Yeah, no. Usually it's fine. The only issues that ever really come up sometimes is like it'll get a little laggy, but that's Zoom. It's part of
Sure.
what's going on now. So
it's kind of a funny view behind me.
No,
it's a
that's great.
Okay.
It's all good.
Okay.
Oh, so how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Thanks.
Great.
It's been a crazy couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's saying the least, I guess.
Definitely.
Yeah. So you guys are going on tour soon.
Yeah, on Wednesday.
You're leaving
Next
Wednesday?
The February 23rd.
Okay. So that's the first show of the tour, or is that when you're leaving to go?
No, it's the first show.
Okay. And it's you're just playing in Quebec?
Yeah, I think the first show is in Rimouski.
Okay. I don't know my geography. I failed that class. So
it's not that far past like Edmundston, New Brunswick.
Okay. But Rimouski, losing my French, I don't use it enough. Rimouski, that's
okay.
in that's in New Brunswick still.
No, it's in Quebec. It's just like it's not far past the Quebec border.
Okay, right on. Cool.
Yeah.
And then so this tour is just Quebec?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, and that goes until the end of March?
It's kind of it's part of like our whole album release tour that we've been doing. Well, that was supposed to happen like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And we've been touring before Christmas from, I guess, September to December. And this is kind of just like we're still on this kind of same album release tour that's like all across Quebec.
Yeah, because the album came out in 2020.
Yeah, it came out like almost right about this time, like February 28th, right before the pandemic happened, like the week before.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Bad
so
timing.
We're just kind of like releasing it now, touring it now.
Yeah. I guess it makes that album cycle a little longer, so it buys you time before you have to put something else out.
Yeah, well, we could have and thought about moving past it and just kind of recording something else instead of like just kind of waiting for a chance to tour it. But we were all still so like into that record,
Yeah.
the story, the songs, that we still like wanted to play it. So we just decided, we'll keep playing it and we'll worry about another record later.
Yeah. Because it's a fantastic album, and I like. It's funny you say the story thing, because as I'm listening to it, I'm just like, man, these are some really cool stories. Like,
Thank you.
yeah. Um, we'll get into the whole songwriting thing and all that. Before we get too deep into the podcast, I'm just gonna tell you a little story of I met Mark, your drummer,
Oh my, yeah,
Mark Andre.
awesome.
I
Yeah,
met him. This would have been in 2014. He was playing with Danger Cat, his other band, at
yeah,
I think it was the Hullabaloo Festival down
right.
in Perth, Andover. So I caught the tail end of his set, and then after he came off, was shooting the shit kind of thing, and he mentioned, he's like, because we were talking about our projects and stuff we had going on, and he's like, yeah, I'm starting to play with the Hey Babies. It's like, I hadn't heard of them. I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of a neat name. He's like, yeah, you should really check them out. So anyway, that's how I heard of the band back
Cool.
in 14. So he kind of put the bug in my ear, and I've been listening to you guys ever since. Like, it's so cool what you guys are doing.
Thank you so
So
much.
I just wanted to
That's
give you a
awesome.
little props up at the start, because yeah.
Cool.
So how did the Hey Babies start?
Um, we met, we're all from different parts of New Brunswick.
Hmm.
We met at a battle of the bands that happened in high school. We're
Okay.
all participated kind of from each our hometowns, and like it's for all French schools in New Brunswick. And yeah, we kind of met each other there, and we're probably like some of the only girls in this thing.
Yeah.
And we're all from like really small towns in New Brunswick. Like, I mean, it's only small towns, but
Yeah.
when we met each other, we were kind of like, had a lot in common, just like being into music, playing music. Um, and yes, and we always kept in touch. And after high school, we all ended up in Moncton, and just thought like we'd get together and jam for fun. And we're like, be cooler if we were doing this together as instead
Okay.
of, separately.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. We just kind of started like conglomerating all our gigs into just, one thing.
Okay. So learning each other's songs or playing covers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Me
Okay.
and Viv started before. Um, we did like shows, just me and her, and then like eventually Kat, she was playing music with her boyfriend, and eventually they broke up. And we're like, Kat, it's time that you
Hmm.
join us now.
Yeah. Come with the
So yeah,
girls. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. So you guys all are songwriters in your own right. Like,
Yeah, totally.
okay. So we're kind of jumping ahead to the songwriting right away. So just because, I mean, there's you guys are such good songwriters, like just the melodies and harmonies, and just the song structures. Like, you guys take left turns so often in your songs that you come back around and you're going straight again. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I think yeah, it's hard for us to like to know what we're doing, but when people talk to us about our music, it kind of always it gives you like a perspective
Hmm.
of what you're doing that you didn't know you were doing. Like our Moncton, our drummer, he's always like, your timing is insane. It makes no sense.
Hmm.
You'll start like your next verse or your next line like not in the timing of the song, or you'll just like that's like it's not something I realize that I do, and I don't want to do it,
Hmm.
but
But it
yeah,
works.
like you say, that's interesting. Thank you.
But it
Yeah.
works. Yeah. It makes
I
it
mean,
different. It keeps the
yeah.
listener guessing, and it's kind of rewarding. Yeah.
I think it's a part of that is due to the fact that none of us like have learned. We've never studied music, and it's
Mhm.
all kind of just like we're all self-taught, and we barely know like they'll be like, "What chord are you playing?" And I'm like, "I don't know.
It sounds
We'll
like
have to
this.
we'll have to sound it out." Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I think sometimes when we're writing, it just kinda we're not following, like, laws of music. We're just
Mhm.
kind of doing what we do.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. So let's jump back even further now, because usually we start the podcast with an introduction of like, so who are you, where are you from, kind of thing.
Right.
So which is fine. There's no rules to this at all. So where are you originally from then? Like if you say small towns, like that's all over the place.
Yeah, I grew up in Memram Cook.
Okay.
It's just outside of Moncton, and I lived in Moncton too, and I live in Memram Cook again.
Okay. Yeah. So you come from a musical background? Like I assume you're Acadian.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
people assume Acadians are musical. I think
Yeah.
that's like the
But that's not
general
always,
consensus.
yeah. But that's
No,
not
it's not
always the
always the
case.
case.
Yeah.
No, my
Um,
family is though. My
mhm.
dad, my uncles, cousins, everybody plays.
Mhm. So do you like growing up, was it always around like kitchen parties and all that stuff?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Like my parents, yeah, like my concept of music as a kid was like what songs my dad could play on the guitar. Those were the songs I knew,
Hmm.
which was like CCR and Van Morrison, Cat Stevens, and like country like George Jones. So
Wow. Okay. So that's
these
some
were
heavy
the
songwriters.
yeah, and I think in my I don't know, maybe yeah, it's not like it's not like we listen to the radio. I don't even know, but really if I think of my childhood and what I listened to, it's like really whatever my dad or uncles were
Mhm.
playing.
Okay. And your dad sings as well, obviously, because of the songs that you were hearing him play. So how much of an
Yeah, my
influence did that have for you to want to play as well?
oh, like my whole life is based on that. He's a great singer and I love how he sings and he still sings. Um
Cool.
I thought I was like gonna play like saxophone or like a totally different instrument, but he got me a guitar for my 10th birthday and I never set it down after that.
Okay. So guitar was the first instrument you played?
Yeah,
Because you're known for your stage having a banjo, which is not a common instrument. Like a lot of people play those guitars that sound like a banjo or they use some sort of
for
effect,
sure.
but to actually play the banjo, that's totally different. Like when did that
Yeah,
kind of happen?
that's like a fluke too. It's not like that I particularly loved it. My dad came home with a banjo. He was helping my grandfather like fix an old house, and in the attic there was like all these instruments. And my grandfather just gave them all to my dad, knowing he played music.
Mhm.
And there was a banjo in there, a really cool 60s banjo with a clear cover, like
Yeah.
clear skin. And when we started the band, the girls knew I had a banjo and kind of knew how to play. And they're like, because at first we just all only played guitar. And they were like, we can't just be like a trio that there's only acoustic guitar. That's
Mhm.
lame.
Because then
But
you'd
it's
get,
not really.
not
But
really
we
lame, but
felt that was lame.
yeah, you'd get pigeonholed as like a bluegrass kind of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they're like, "Why don't you just play the banjo since you kind of can?" So that's how I became the banjo player. But I still like I sometimes I'm embarrassed to even play it when I'm like at real music festivals because I'm like not really a banjo player and
Right.
I'm playing in front of people who are.
Okay. So it's not like you're
But
going
I
to
mean,
go up to Steve Martin and start playing Duel of the Banjo.
no, no way. I still want to learn and be like I'd love to be a real banjo player, but
Hmm.
it's on my list of things to do.
Yeah, you fake it till you make it, right?
That's what I'm doing.
That's what we all do.
Yeah.
If people only knew.
Exactly. They have no idea.
I have no idea. Um, so so you didn't really listen a lot to the radio. So when did like popular music kind of come into the picture?
Um, I have 2 older sisters,
Hmm.
and they, like, obviously were really into, like, the Hanson
Hanson.
brothers?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like
Mbop.
Spice Girl.
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, they were all about that. But my parents were pretty strict, and they didn't want us to, like, really listen to pop music, like, I wasn't allowed to watch much music or, like, they didn't want me to like Britney Spears.
Okay.
And I
Yeah.
didn't.
Fair enough.
But yeah. So I think like just like going to the mall or going to school and people would be like, "Oh, you didn't listen to the new Britney Spears thing?" And I was like, "No, I not allowed." Or it's just not a thing in my house.
Yeah, yeah.
My first CD that I remember owning was the Jackson 5 like Columbia House. Like it was like
The
a
compilation kind of
compilation.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, Columbia House, man, I probably still owe them pennies.
We all do.
I
That's
think we
why
all
it
do.
doesn't exist.
Exactly. I mean, it was a great idea, but man, their
It
business
was, yeah,
model was terrible.
a little flawed.
A little flawed, yeah. Um, so the banjo came a little later and not really a banjo player. But you
No.
you play guitar and Vivienne plays guitar
Mhm.
and Kat plays the ukulele and
Now she plays
bass.
bass
Yeah,
mostly.
mostly
And
bass.
we all kind of switch around. Like Viv plays the drums too, or electric guitar, or sometimes I play piano.
Hmm.
We can all kind of play bass.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes it like a different kind of a stage show where you kind of jump from place to place, song to song. It kind of makes it interesting as a performance.
Yeah, we have been doing that more so lately, like, just completely switch around who's playing what.
Hmm.
It's like a party trick. You do it just to shock the crowd, even though it doesn't really matter who's playing what. You just do it
Yeah.
just to entertain.
Entertainment. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Um, so when you guys started the Hey Babies, like you said, you all came from different areas and met up in Moncton. One of the best parts of starting a band is coming up with the name, but also one of the worst parts of starting a band is coming up with the name.
For
How did you
sure.
guys land on the Hey Babies? And
We
were
don't
there any,
remember.
you don't remember?
No. We've been asked that so many times and none
Yeah.
of us remember
Do you remember
how
any
it
of the
came
other
about.
names that were on the chopping block?
We remember that there was something about it was like maybe the Doreens or just Doreen,
Okay.
like an old lady's name.
Yeah.
But we don't remember and we've regretted it along the way. Like, man, why did we ever put the word babies in our name?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, stuff like
Because
that. You
to me,
you never think it's gonna stick, but it just does.
yeah, but I guess it's kind of like with songs and music in general, people kind of take from it and take their own interpretation. Like for me, when I hear the Hey Babies, it kind of sounds like you're poking fun at like all the cat calling and like hey baby, like, and you're kind
Oh,
of, oh,
right.
it's like you're taking it and you're using it to empower yourselves and being like kind of sticking the finger at them, like, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's
Well,
how
that's
I
a good
took it.
it's a good way to see it. I
Yeah.
like that better than what it is.
You can use
'Cause
that.
it's Hay, like hay, like for horses.
Yeah. Well, there's that. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's true.
And it's kinda like people are always like they're always like, "Yeah, rolling around in the hay," you know, making jokes about, like, making babies in a barn. We're like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, I know, it's not what we intended this to be like."
You can't control what people think, but there's sometimes it just goes way too far the other way.
For sure.
Yeah. Um, so one thing that I do really like about your sound is the harmonies. Because you're all so different. Like you can really hear all three of your voices. It's same thing with the songwriting process. Like the songs sound like as one band because of the instrumentation and the voices, but the
Mhm.
song structures and the songs themselves, you can clearly see that there's three people crafting these together. So do you all come with songs pretty much pre-formed before you bring it to the band? Or is it just like a riff and you all kind of work it out?
We used to, like, more write separately and then kind of bring, like, a almost finished idea to the others.
Hmm.
And like you say, I know what you mean, like, if I'm listening to our older records, I can definitely tell, like, who came up with what. But, our last record, Boîte, lettres, was definitely more of, like, a collaboration from beginning to start.
Hmm.
But it's hard to, like, completely start a song and finish it three people. Like usually someone has, the original idea to get it going.
Yeah. And usually bands, there's like one person that is kind of like the figurehead of the band that kind of writes the songs and then kind of work it out. But you got three of those in the band, so that must be a different dynamic to work with.
It is, and it's yeah, because it's not like we're a band where there's like a guy that's just the drummer. It's really just like three songwriters who are playing together, and there's not really like one person who's more in charge or who's more taking the lead on writing.
Mhm.
But it is, yeah, it's always a challenge to, I don't know, to always like want to do the same things and to write together. It's just hard. But I think the older we are and the more that we've allowed ourselves to do other projects outside of the Hey Babies,
Mhm.
now when we write, we're more like, I feel like because I have a solo project and Viv has had one and Kat does she plays bass for other bands. We're all kind of coming to the Hey Babies with like less expectations, I guess, like because we can like channel our creativity in other ways. So when we're together, we're more like receptive to new things and like just because before we only used to do that. So all my ideas, I wanted them to like accept them and love them and use them, but
Yeah.
now they don't have to. I can
Yeah.
do songs on my own or with other people.
Yeah. Yeah. So how is it like when you're writing a song? Well, I guess like when you're in the room and you're coming up with something comes to you and you start writing it. Um, how do you decide to bring it to Hey Babies or keep it for yourself?
I think almost any idea could be um any song I do on my own could almost be a Hey Baby song, but I don't love like almost finishing a song and then showing it to them because it doesn't feel like a collaboration anymore. It just feels like and for them too, it's not as much fun when I'm just showing them something I did all by myself and
Mhm.
they're like, "Oh, it's already good as is. We don't want to, change this." So I kind of like if I'm at home and I write a whole song, I kind of just like set it aside.
Mhm.
But I think I write enough that in between like the Hey Babies were we don't write together that often. We do it like once a year. We'll rent a cottage because the rest of the time we're touring, and then if we're not on tour, we're sick of each other, so we're like just at home. So, and we only release a record every like few years. So
Mhm.
usually, like in those few years where we haven't released anything, is when I'll keep the songs for myself because we're kind of like in the middle of a tour, and there is no time to work on music together. So I'm just kind of like, I don't know.
Mhm.
It's a good question. But
So
yeah, I
so
don't have a clear-cut answer.
yeah. So when you guys rent a cottage, like do you have anything at all, or it's just you're starting from blank slate?
I mean, we usually all have like a few like voice memos on our phone or a few
Right.
like, some one-liners in a book somewhere or like a beginning of an idea, but not always. Like our last album, we all kind of showed up with nothing. But the last record, like it's unique because it's like a total concept album
Yes,
based on
I was
letters.
gonna get to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like I showed up with a bag of letters that I found in an attic, and we didn't know we were going to write about that, but we were like had no ideas. So we just started reading these old letters
Yeah.
and then we started writing.
Are the people who may or may not follow you guys on Instagram, is that the photos you've been putting up on Instagram where you guys are all kind of on the floor looking at different
Oh,
art
we're
and
actually
stuff?
working on yeah, well, this week we're actually working on um it's kind of like we're going through our archives of our last 10 years as a band
Okay.
because we're putting together like an expo, like an art exposition.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so that's what we've been posting on Instagram lately. It's
Okay.
just kind of us going through all our pictures and videos and posters and
Yeah, because 2014, that you're coming up on 10 years soon.
oh, we actually started in 2011.
Okay. Well, yeah, the album came out in 14, but okay, so it has been 10 years. 10,
Yeah,
11 years now.
our first EP came out in 2012.
Right. Yeah. That's on, I saw that on Spotify. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, so you guys are past the 10-year mark then, because it's 2022 now.
Yeah. We officially did our first show in November of 2011.
Wow. So yeah, the concept album thing, because I'm kind of old school when it comes to listening to music. Like whenever I listen to anything, I don't listen to just one song, or I don't listen to playlists. I find a band, I find an album, and I start from track one and I go all the way through to track whatever to the end of the album. Like I've always been that way. It's not to say I don't listen to like songs on the radio and stuff like that, but like if I'm gonna listen to an album, it's cover to cover. And that's something that I found is lost, is the whole concept album, like, Meatloaf, the Bat Out of Hell, and those things. So when I listened to Boîte the first time, I was like, this is a concept album. Like, holy crap, like you guys pulled it off.
Thank you.
So that whole process of reading all those letters and stuff, like there must have been a lot of material that was left out. Like, were there any songs that you guys didn't put into the album?
Um, I don't think so. I think we did all the ones we meant to do, but it's hard. Like, I know it seems like there'd be so much stuff to write about, but a lot of the letters were really mundane and boring. Like it sometimes it's just like, I ate yogurt today for the first time. Yogurt is a new food and it's for dieting. Like, because they're letters from the 60s, so yogurt was new. I don't know. So yes, I can't say like every letter wasn't like this like profound
kind of like
story.
kind of like a Facebook feed.
Yeah, it was
Seriously.
like lame, like some stuff was lame, and it's just
Yeah.
4 years, and the girl who wrote the letters was probably like 22 or 23, so sometimes it's like really naive and
Mhm.
dumb, and she's like telling her mom how she met this guy who's going to pay her rent and
Okay.
stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we kind of like, to make the whole record into to build a concept around it, I went and interviewed like her old neighbors in Moncton.
Oh,
I
wow.
talked
Okay.
to like family friends. Um, we did like a lot of like investigative like stuff like on Facebook and old records, and we kind of like had to fill in the blanks. We
Mhm.
imagined what her life would have been like after like the last letter is from 1969. So I had to like imagine what happened to her next to keep like to do the whole concept.
Mhm. Was her name Jacqueline?
Yeah.
It was?
Yeah.
Awesome. Because that whole song, like, my name's Jacqueline, you can call me Jackie. Like,
It's a
cool.
great name.
It's a
Yeah,
great
yeah.
name. Yeah. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
that
we
was
loved
cool.
it. And it's just a good name from like that era,
Yeah.
60s, like all, yeah, it's
Yeah, because that's
perfect.
another thing that I noticed, like the whole aesthetic, like, the music video that you guys did for that song, and for some of the
Yeah.
other songs, like that whole aesthetic, even like your wardrobe, like when you guys are on stage now, like you have that whole vibe. Um, and I know you make clothes, so do you do all the costumes for the band? Like,
I mean, not always. I have made some. I wish I had more time because I would do them all because I love to, but sometimes we're out shopping and I happen to find, just cool stuff that I think would be cool for the stage or the
mhm,
Hey Babies, and we buy some stuff, but I
yeah,
definitely love thinking about the look. And I think it's a new thing. We never used to like wear like stage clothes before,
mhm,
but
yeah,
I think ever since we've started, it's just brought like this extra thing to the live show that people are like, can't believe we found or
yeah,
that we bothered to get dressed the same. Like nobody, it's not so much of a thing anymore, but I think it
yeah.
still adds to your show.
It really does. It's something like in the band that I'm in, like we're in a punk band, so we don't do that, but we kind of used to try to do that. Like
Hmm.
the singer used to have a cowboy hat because we had kind of this outlaw thing, and we were all going to
Nice.
wear like certain types of shirts, and so we abandoned that a long time ago. But it is true, like bands don't do that as much anymore, And I think
Mhm.
it's sort of like it has to be a certain type of band to be able to pull it off. Um,
Sure.
like I know, like the Hives, they have that whole black and white. They all wear the matching suits and stuff. The Interrupters, like they all have like the skinny ties and stuff. And then the girl singer, she's wearing something different, but the three guys are
Yeah.
all dressed the same. It really does add to the stage show. And like when you find that look, then you kind of don't have to worry about, oh, what am I going to wear tonight? Because you already know,
That helps too.
because
Yeah.
am I going to wear this black t-shirt or this black t-shirt? I don't know. Like that's kind of my dilemma, usually before a show.
Yeah.
Um,
I think it's been like seen as a cheesy thing to like to show that you care.
yeah.
Like I think like people don't want to be like, oh, it's cheesy if we all look the same or if we like have this thing going. But to me, I think in this era where like it's cool to be like really chill and like to not rock out on stage, to not dance, to
Mm,
be like serious.
yeah.
Um, it's good to just do something different and to show that you care. I
Mhm.
definitely care. Like I put everything I have into my music career, so I don't want people to think that I don't care about the show I'm doing. So if it means like dressing up extra outlandish
Yeah.
to be on stage, then sure.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, most big bands, they have stylists. Like,
Yeah,
they all have, somebody that takes care of what they're going to wear and where they have to be. Right. So to think that, the independent bands and people that do it themselves, they have to work like 4 times as hard just to, make it work. Cause you're booking your own shows for the most part. You're traveling yourself. Like I mean, like you're the one driving the van, you
for
know,
sure.
you're picking the clothes, you're writing the song. Like it's a full-time gig, but everybody also has to pay bills, and most independent bands have to work a side job. They can't just do music to keep the lights on.
Yeah,
Like I have a full-time job that I go to, Monday to Friday, like, and I'm sure like you work as well. So it's challenging. And then to be able to fit all of that and still make quality music, like it's a lot of work.
it is.
How do you manage all that?
Um, well, it helped. We have a record label, we have a manager, we have a booker.
Hmm.
All that helps. That's like you said, it's a huge part of the job. And we don't like this. The Hey Babies is really like my main job. I don't have a job. I'm totally self-employed
Hmm.
by the Hey Babies mostly. And
Hmm.
then I do like other, sometimes I make costumes for other people. I play in other bands. I have a solo music project too.
Hmm.
Um, so I think what really helps is that we're three also who are really in charge of the band. It's
Hmm.
not like I'm doing the deciding for everybody or I'm not doing all of the work. It's kind of split in three.
Yeah.
And just because also it's been 10 years, we've kind of just gotten this pattern of working and like it kind of just, we're so used to it. And I mean, it's still overwhelming all the time. And I work more than full time,
Yeah.
but uh, I'm so used to this lifestyle that I'm just kind of like, it's just part of me. It's just like,
Yeah.
yeah,
So being like where you all kind of where it's the three of you and you've been doing it for so long now, like you've kind of each found your own like role in the band. Like so you would do like costumes and stuff like that, and you've got your manager and your booker and stuff. So like you each have kind of found what your role outside of songwriting that you do outside of that.
it's not really, we're not
No.
that organized and it kind of changes.
Okay.
Like sometimes I'm kind of the most organized person in the band and I think the girls um they're kind of they lean on me to do a lot of the like answering emails, paperwork, banking
Right.
stuff.
Hmm.
That's kind of mostly my job. But at the same time, like we're all kind of like checking each other's emails and like just doing whatever needs to be done. Whoever's available is just gonna do,
Hmm.
whatever it is that we need. And it's kind of like just making sure that it's all like split between us, the workload.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, we all kind of do all of it, I
Hmm.
guess.
So do you all three of you do the social media stuff, or is because like with us, I do the Instagram and Jack does the Twitter, and then we both kind of do
Right.
the Facebook. Like, so do you all have access to those accounts, or is it like one person specific to each?
No, we all have it. I mean, Viv doesn't check it a lot. She's like an old lady. She doesn't like social media.
Okay.
Um, I'm probably the person who deals with it the most. But we all kind of do it because, like if I'm like I need to post something to announce the next show, I'm like, who has a picture? And then someone will have one and
Yeah.
they'll send me a picture and they'll write a caption and I'll post it or something. We still kind of all do it together.
Yeah. I mean, and it's a bit different for every band, right? Like everybody kind of fills the void when it needs to be filled, right? Like
For
they
sure.
like they say in French, le bouche trou. It's like whoever's available kind of puts the finger in
Yep,
the hole, and
that's
then
definitely how
yeah,
we operate. Yeah. Push through.
the bush through.
We
Yeah. Um, so when you guys are coming up with songs, because you guys are predominantly French,
hmm
um, because I'm obviously because you're all Acadian, like your French background, that your mother tongue, most comfortable in that, but you do throw the odd English song in there, and you do so in your solo as well. How do you like when you're coming into a song? Do you have it like preconceived? Okay, this is going to be an English song, or does it just kind of happen naturally?
Um, it's not like no, I think it's just like when you have like inspiration to create something, sometimes like your idea, like my lyric ideal will be in English. So I'm just like gonna write an English song. Um, I find like more and more I try to purposely write in French because that my career is in French. So if I'm making too much English music, then I'm like, who's gonna listen to it?
Mhm.
Maybe that's dumb. I don't know. Maybe I should be doing both more. But
I th-
but
Being
also
from
what were
sorry,
you gonna say? Sorry.
I was gonna say like being from a bilingual province, and your fans generally are
That's
both
true. Yeah.
English and French. I mean, outside of the international market, like in France or in Quebec, is predominantly French, but for the most part, all those places consume English music as well.
That's true. I
So
guess yeah, I'm just so used to like being in the French thing that I'm like
mhm.
always thinking like maybe it'd be harder for my label to push anglophone music there because they're in Montreal and they only pretty much do French bands.
Mhm.
But I mean I can't help myself that I'm bilingual and sometimes I just still write in English. It's
Mhm.
like I'm still have like someone will say something and it'll inspire me to write a song in English.
Mhm. So where do you find most of your inspiration? Like just day-to-day conversation, or is it like the news or like hot topics, that kind of stuff? Or
Not really. It's more yeah, people like just talking to friends or family. And in the last few years I've like started the practice of just writing every day. Just
Mhm.
just like journaling, I guess, or just
Yeah.
at least writing poetry. And sometimes if I'm writing about what I did or some how I'm feeling, then I'll realize later in the day like, oh, like I didn't realize that this really bothered me or that I spent so much time thinking about this person. Like if I'm writing it down, it's much more obvious what's going on in my head.
Mhm.
So I think if like later in the day I'm realizing I wrote something that I don't know, maybe is a big deal to me, then I'm like, oh, I gotta write a song about it or explore that more.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, inspiration can I mean can hit you at any time, so it's sort of depending on
Yeah.
day to day. Yeah. So you touched on the label in Montreal and playing predominantly French. So you guys have toured in a lot of French markets around the world. You've gone overseas and played in France, um,
Yeah.
and down south in like Louisiana,
Yes.
and down in the States. Um, how do you find the reception of the type of French that we are here is not, I mean, maybe close in Louisiana because of being Creole and around a lot of English, but how do you find like the reception is to the whole Acadian French and like le chiac and kind of how in your songs you're throwing in like English words or terminology, and they're like, are they pretty open with that? Like how does that go over?
Like 95% of the time people love it, and they're like, for them it's like so exotic and they find it charming.
Hmm.
And then some people hate it and think I'm ruining French, and it's a disgrace, and they think I'm making it up. They think it's not real. Like
Really?
Acadian French is just like, it's
It's
just,
not real French.
they think it's not real French and I'm doing it on purpose. And yeah, that happens for sure. And we have like, people who just hate it. But most of the time, and I think more and more Acadian culture is becoming something people know about in la francophonie, in the French parts of the world.
Hmm.
Um, like just when we started 10 years ago in Quebec, so many people had no idea it existed, what it sounded like. And now it's become more of an accepted thing, and people are like excited about it. They like it and
Yeah.
they want to hear more of it. And in France, it's so weird. Like some people, I've played in like little rural parts of France to older people, and I kid you not, an old man told me I had no accent. He's like, "You sound like me." And I was like, "I don't, but sure, bud." What he means is that Acadians speak old French. They speak
Okay.
French. It's because we're so isolated, our French kind of sounds like what French in France would have been like 400 years ago before we ever came here.
Okay.
And so sometimes I'm saying verbs or words that aren't in dictionaries anymore, but old people there, it's like familiar to them.
Right.
It's hard to explain.
Yeah, no,
But
I mean,
yeah,
it makes sense because I mean, if we go back to like 1755, like when the Acadian, they were deported to here, we came from France. So if that's
yeah,
how
it
they were
all
speaking then, and that's
at the
how we
time.
landed here, and that's we didn't get any other influence since then, and that's how we speak now, that makes total
Exactly.
sense.
Yeah. So yeah, surprisingly enough, some people think it's totally like it's pretty normal and it's not that strange. And I think if you're in Europe, no matter what part of Canada you're from, even if you're from Montreal, they still think your accent is crazy. They still
Yeah.
think your
Yeah.
French is like
Terrible.
Canadian.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter that you're Acadian or not. It just still sounds foreign. And then
Okay.
in Louisiana, it's kind of like, I can't speak for them, but I mean, a lot of times when I've been there and I've talked to someone from there who still speaks French or has learned it from their parents or whatever, sometimes I genuinely thought they were from like Shediac or something.
Really? It's
I've
that
asked that.
close?
Yeah, I've asked a few people like at festivals, and I'm like, "Oh, you're here from New Brunswick too?" And they're like, "No, I'm from here."
Really?
Yeah.
It's that close?
Yes.
That's
It
amazing.
it's just sounds like another region of New Brunswick or Nova Scotia to me. And now that I'm more used to it and have gone more often, I can tell it's kind of different, but
Mhm.
barely.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's like any country that has, a northern or a southern part, like you can hear the accents that are different. Like we hear them right away, but like to them, it's
Yeah,
just part of their language. Or vice versa. Like they can tell, yo, you're from the north and I'm from the south or the west. And to us, it just all sounds the same. Yeah.
for sure.
Like especially Ireland, like they all sound the same. Yeah.
Just like that. Yeah.
Just like that. Yeah. So your solo stuff, your first album, Joie de Vivre, also great album, has that
Thank you.
70s kind of vibe to it. Um, is that like, is that a big influence to you? I mean, like you were saying, you were listening to Cat Stevens and those bands, which were from the 70s. So that must have put a little, I don't know, like a subconscious thing. You kind of go back to that era in some of your sound. Is that something that you just let happen natural, or is that like you're specifically going for that sound?
I think, like I was saying, it's I think no matter if I was a kid or if it's me now, most of the music I listen to is always, always, always from the 60s or 70s.
Mhm.
And I think like even without purposely trying, when when I'm writing or recording, I'm always using references to what I like or will listen to, and
Mhm.
it's always retro stuff. So I think naturally that's what I'm gonna like create
Mhm.
or aim towards. And
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, it's definitely like a huge part of what I do and like what I listen to. And
Yeah, because it seems natural. Like, because you see like certain bands or artists, I'm not gonna call them out, Madonna, that are always. I mean, she's a trendsetter. Don't get me wrong, she's great, but
yeah,
like they're always like kind of grabbing onto something and then trying to make it cool again, or it seems like they're trying too hard to be something else.
right.
Whereas that whole vibe just comes natural to you, and it as from an audience perspective, it seems natural. It's not fake. You can kind of tell when someone's being fake, and that does not come off at all. Like it feels like naturally who you are.
Yeah, I think like I know what you mean. Like there's definitely bands like that are like just totally ripping off another 70s band.
Yeah.
And it's not that I definitely don't try to do that, and it's not that I'm trying to make the 70s cool. I think they're the coolest. I don't
Yeah.
have to convince anybody.
Yeah,
And
right.
and I definitely like I just assume that when people hear my music, a whole group of people will just be like, I don't like this, it sounds old,
Mm.
or this isn't like hip enough for me, which is fine because I don't like what plays on the radio now. I'm not like into I'm just don't listen to a lot of new music. So it goes both ways, and I don't try to like do it as an act. It's just what I like. And if I do it justice, that's great. I'm not trying to like neither like recreate it or just be stuck in the past. I have cuz I'm born in the 90s. I can't It's not even my era. I have
Mhm.
nothing to do with the 70s.
Yeah.
It's just kind of I don't know. It just speaks to me.
Yeah. I mean, like you say, it's part of when you were growing up. Like your father and your family would have lived through that stuff, and it was an influence on you from an early age. So it's just makes sense that that's sort of the natural path that you would take,
For sure,
with
yeah.
that. And the same thing with like with the look, like the aesthetic, all of that, like the fashion, like your hairstyles and the makeup, like it all just kind of comes from that, and it doesn't feel put upon. It's very unique and natural, and it's different. Like you don't see that all the time, so it stands out.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Um, so if Joie de Vivre came out in 2018, 2019.
I think it was 2017.
Okay, so it's a little older than that. So do you have anything like solo work? Because I know you've been playing some solo shows recently,
Yeah.
with Mike Trask. Everybody, check him out. Um, so is that something that you have kind of on the horizon that's going to be coming out soon, or can you not talk about that?
I can talk about it. I can talk about what I know. I recorded an album this summer,
Mhm.
and it's done.
Okay.
And I've got a contract with the same record label that the Hey Babies are on.
Okay.
They're gonna release it. I just don't know when, but it'll
Okay.
be this year. And
Okay. So
I'm hoping, or supposed to find out anytime, but first single should come out in March or April.
okay. So that's very soon.
Yeah,
That's very exciting. Okay. Cool.
it is. I'm really excited.
Yeah. So is that you're gonna have like a whole separate band to support that, or are you just gonna like you and Mike, because you've been playing shows together, are you guys gonna kind of do like uh, I don't want to call it a couples tour, but um, like a you and him supporting each other, kind of taking it on the road?
I'm kind of I used his band to play on my record, and I'm gonna use his band to tour.
Okay.
um,
Take that, honey.
yeah, it's this. I just like his band,
Well,
and
they're great players. Yeah.
yeah, Mike plays guitar for me, and yeah, I'm gonna use his bass player Adam Mowry from St. John, and Matt Gallant, who played in a bunch of bands. He's from Halifax, and like sure I could use all of the Hey Babies band, but I don't want to. I don't want people to think that I'm like using the Hey Babies to advance myself
Hmm.
personally, and like I love playing with all that
Yeah.
whole band. The Hey Babies are great. Um, I just kind of I just never want to use the Hey Babies.
Yeah, I totally understand what you mean. Like when you're playing one project and it becomes a family, and then when you're kind of
Totally.
doing something on your own, like because then it becomes like, when does it become a Hey Baby set, and then when does it become a Julie
Yeah,
Aubé set? Like, because then when you're going to see the show,
definitely.
it's like, well, why don't you guys play the Hey Baby songs? Like, well, we're not here to play those. We're here to play these. Like, or vice
Yeah,
versa. So
it
it's
gets messy. And
yeah.
and the more that I've played with other people, like every time, this being my second solo record, I realized that I get a lot of experience out of playing with different players, different
Mhm.
drummers, different bass players, and having different producers even, or recording in different studios. Everybody does something differently, and there's always something to learn from that person about how they play, how they put a song together, how they put a rhythm section together, and it's kind of, I'm
It's a
glad I
different,
get the chance to do it because it just makes me better
yeah,
as a
absolutely.
musician, and I'm just get more experience when I do stuff with the Hey Babies. I have like this whole new bag of tools that
Yeah.
I
So
can
yeah,
bring to them.
when you come back, yeah, it just makes the whole thing stronger. And it's the same with Viv or Kat going off and doing their thing when they
Exactly.
come back. Because I always found that weird, like when somebody's in a band and they've become established in that band, and then they go off and do something on the side, people think like they're cheating on the band. It's like, no, like there's, as a musician, as somebody that creates, like there's so many things that you want to do that you can't do in that wheelhouse, like, because it just doesn't fit. It's
Totally.
like in Nirvana, like Dave Grohl became the Foo Fighters. Well, he was doing Foo Fighters while he was with Nirvana. Like all those songs were written, but they would have never come out had he not done the side project. But I mean, that was different because the whole Kurt Cobain thing and all that. But like, he was clearly not just a drummer. And so you're clearly
For
not
sure.
just a Hey Baby, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
I know. And to me, it's super important. I'm like, I haven't been bored since I'm probably 8. I have too many hobbies, passions, and I don't have enough. There's not enough time in a day for me to get everything done that I want done. And with the Hey Babies, I'm so fortunate to have, done the records that we did, the tours that we did, but it's still like, so it's still just, one project, same people, and, a limited amount of resources, and things like, Viv and Kat have to want to do all the same things I want to do.
Yeah.
And sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes
Mhm.
we don't like all the same things or don't have all the same influences. So, maybe I listen to more, like sometimes I write blues songs, and we did put one on one of our records, but it's not something that they like as much as me probably. So
Mhm.
if I want to explore that, then, I kind of got to do it on my own, or, it's just, yeah, it's like you say, it's important to explore all your interests and get
Mhm.
a chance to like, to get it out of your system and just try new stuff.
Yeah, 100%. Um, so being that you've toured in a lot of different places, and I don't want to like have you say like, this was the best place we play, because that doesn't really exist, because every place has its own memory. Some are good, some are bad, that kind of thing. But what's the place that you've gone to that's felt the most like playing at home?
There's a few places like that. Um, Playing in, okay, Sudbury, Ontario reminds me a lot of Moncton,
Okay.
and I love Sudbury. I find like there's a small French community there, and it's similar. They're so secluded, and it's like industrial kind of
Working class.
poor blue collar
Mhm.
working class kind of town, and I
Mhm.
find that there's a lot of similarities and a lot of dive bars where I feel at home
Yeah.
at.
There's a
And
lot
I
of
feel the
those.
same. I find Saskatoon kind of has that too. And then I think our other favorite place in the world would be playing in Lafayette in Louisiana. It's
Mm,
just something about um like like as an Acadian, you always hear about Cajun culture and you
yeah.
know Cajuns exist, and then until you meet them and you go there, it's like it's really surreal and it's inspiring, and it's just weird to like I have this friend there and he brought me to visit his grandfather because he spoke French and he wanted his grandfather to speak French with us.
Right.
And
Okay.
he asked me what my last name was. And when I said it was Aubé, he's like, "Oh, my neighbor is Aubé." And he was so excited that he met an Acadian from New Brunswick that had, the same last
Same
name.
last name. Wow.
It's just
It reminds you how
interesting.
small the world really is.
For sure.
Hmm.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
yeah, so it's always fun to go there and to meet people who are from so far away but yet really similar.
Yeah. I mean, people are people. Like the
Mhm.
people, like we all have the same wants and needs and desires, so it really connects everybody together. And music
For sure.
is that language in spades. Um, so if you weren't playing music and being a musician, what career path do you think you would have taken?
I feel like I definitely knew I was gonna be or just do music even when I was in high school. That's what I told everybody I was gonna do, and I didn't. I hadn't even planned to go to university or college. I was pretty much like just dead set on doing that. Uh, if it wasn't music, it was gonna be arts. And I mean, now if I had to choose another career, I'd probably I love gardening.
Okay.
I'm really, really into gardening.
Okay.
Maybe I'd like be in agriculture or fashion. I guess I sew a lot. I love making clothes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you make clothes for like on commission? Like can people buy an original Julie Aubé jacket or trousers or anything like that? Like,
People have asked, and I'm really, I guess, picky about what people are like, "Can you sew my curtains?" And I'm like, "Are you crazy? No way. That's so lame." Or like, "Can you fix my jacket?" And I'm like, "Man, you know how many jackets of mine I need to fix?"
yeah.
I like creating pieces that you just can't buy. I like seeing a vintage Sears catalog from the 70s and being like, "Man, I could make that."
Hmm.
So so yeah, I mean, not a lot of people want that besides me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't have that much demand or
Yeah.
requests.
I know a buddy of mine, I don't know if you're friends with him as well. He's the bass player in which is which, Dan Cadera.
I know of the band, and I don't know if I know him.
Okay. He's totally into the retro thing. And on his Facebook, he found like these old catalogs, like I don't know if they were Zellers or Sears or whatever. And he was posting like just pictures and pictures. Like every day there'd be like an album of like 30 or 40 pictures of all these like, just the models posing and all the different fashion from back in like I want to say it was the 80s, because there was a lot of like neon colors and a lot
Right.
of like all the same shirt, but like available in all the different colors. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so that, yeah, that'd be kind of a trip, like to go down and because like the clothes have changed so much since then. Like, and not always for the better. Like I agree. Like there's something about that era, those fashion, like it was different. It was more artistic.
Oh, definitely. And
Yeah.
I think like my, I think the having a lot of friends that are guys just in bands, they're always like, "Man, where can I buy clothes? Like, where can I shop to find cool stuff?" And I'm like, "I don't know. It's hard. If you're a man, it's like it's almost like not it's so uncommon for a man to find like colorful, weird, eccentric clothes. It's almost like don't do that, or it's almost
Yeah.
like not. It's almost like you're weird if you're gonna dress like wacky. Most
Yeah.
people wear jeans, plaid shirts, t-shirts, blazers, and so yeah, it's a bummer about fashion these days. When you look at James Brown in the 70s, he had some wild outfits. What
Yep.
happened?
Yep.
I don't know.
Just the whole like hyper masculine culture kind of, I think, took over, like especially in the 80s and the 90s, because it was, I don't want to like say it was necessarily like homophobic, but there was certainly definitely like this forefront of being man's man, right? So I
Like
think that kind of
NASCAR
pushed,
and double wrestling and stuff
yeah,
like
like that,
that.
that hyper masculinity thing, I think kind of pushed all that aside. And unless you were James Brown or Prince, whom, you know, people kind of looked at them like as if they weren't manly men, right? They were
Right.
gay or they were different, like, which now it's like who gives a shit. So I think it's coming back. Everything's cyclical, and I
Yeah, I
think it's,
agree.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's going to come back, and guys are going to start. I mean, there's grooming sections for men now, like, like you can buy beard and face products, and like there's all those different things that are kind of coming out now to, men's makeup, you know.
It's wild.
Yeah, and I think it's great,
Yeah. It's cool. It's definitely cool. It's more acceptable to just be like, even me growing up as a kid, I kind of always liked my mom. Like I had two sisters, and my family didn't have that much money, so I never really got to shop at the mall. She would always bring me to Frenchie's or
hmm
Salvation Army, and that's where I got into vintage clothes, because it's kind of like what there was there at the time in the 90s. It was like weird 70s stuff. And that was like always like the most interesting thing, like the most colorful, wacky thing was like a dress from the 60s.
hmm
And yeah, and growing up, that was like, people were like embarrassed about shopping secondhand and like be seen to wear stuff that wasn't like Adidas or
yeah,
Nike. And that's
yeah,
like not so much of a thing anymore. So
yeah,
no, it's all good.
yeah. I mean, I do all my shopping at thrift stores or secondhand, like, yeah, that's where you find all the cool stuff, like,
Agreed.
y- to go off to like a Walmart or whatever and just grab something off the shelf, and then you're going to walk down the street and you're going to see like three people wearing the same thing. Like,
Yeah, I
who
know.
wants that?
For
Like,
sure.
um, going back to the sequencing in the albums, this a thing that I noticed when I was listening to the albums, and I don't know if you did this on purpose, but all three of the Hey Babies albums, the first song is a song that you're the lead singer. Did you
I
notice
didn't
that?
notice.
It's true.
No. Huh.
Yeah, Bonnie and Clyde, and I can't think of the other two, but yeah, like the first tracks on each of the albums, you're the lead singer.
Jeez. I feel like but you know what? Like if you see us live, I sing most of the time. And I don't know why that is. I don't know why it ends up that way. I think, like I said, I'm the most organized, and I think maybe when we're songwriting, I'll be the one to like finish a song, or I'll be the one who has an idea to start one, and maybe like usually like if we're starting a song, that person kinds of end up being the person to sing it.
Right. That
And
makes
and
sense.
maybe I'm the person like kind of like making it. I'm not the person to make it happen, but I think maybe I'm more of workaholic,
hmm
definitely. So I think
Okay.
like maybe to get things done and wrap it up, maybe I end up being the person to get us there.
Yeah. And for Boîte, like where it was the concept album, like the whole sequencing, like the song order, like was that something that you guys really like meticulously went through, like track by track, and how the story was gonna progress? Or like did you write the song and like did you write the album in that sequence?
Um, no, it wasn't written in sequence, because the letters were all, we kind of all read them like they weren't like in order
Okay.
chronologically.
Yeah.
And it took us a long time to do that, because they weren't all dated right,
Mm,
and we had to like go by like information she was talking about.
okay.
So we kind of just wrote it not in order, and then we tried to kind of put it in order, but then with our producer, he kind of had his whole other plan for the sequencing of the songs.
hmm
And I think he kind of won that argument. The sequencing is like was his.
Oh, okay.
So I can't even remember in the end how it is. I know, I remember that we wanted to put the song. There's a disco song, and we wanted it to go after same old, and that's not how it's on the record, but we totally meant it to be that way.
Okay. Because usually like a producer or label, they'll look at the songs and like, okay, the first song on the album, that has to be the first single. So whatever the first single is going to be, it's got to be that because it has to open that way. And then it's like the third or the fourth song has to be the other hit kind of thing, right? Or the other single. So that's kind of like old school record
For
label
sure.
kind of, I don't want to say bullshit, but yeah.
Yeah, everybody has like their way of doing it, and sometimes it's like sometimes we're the ones deciding, but then sometimes someone overrides that decision and is like, you guys don't know what you're doing. This is the song. This is how the song
So
list
you're
is
like,
gonna
what do you
go.
mean? We're the ones that wrote the damn stuff. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So going back to the first album, because my mom is from the village de La Vidette, which is just outside of Negowak.
Okay, cool.
So the song Negowak and Back, which, I mean, you guys have a lot of really good songs, and I don't necessarily want to say that Negowak and Back is my favorite song, but it's the one that kind of hit me the most when I first heard it. And that the whole story and like just the choice of the journey that you guys take in that song just spoke to me, when I first heard it. How did that idea of that whole road trip song kind of come about?
I remember one day we were playing, I think in Caracat, and Kat wrote a poem on the way home called Nigwak and Back, and she read me the poem, and I loved it. And it was kind of more about the drive, I think, maybe not even necessarily like about I don't know how you say that in English, exode rural, like people
Yeah.
leaving their small
Yeah.
towns to go to bigger cities.
Yeah.
And the title Nigwak and Bag, I just couldn't let go of it. I had it in my mind for months after. And I had thought about, like, we're all from small towns where like Nigwak and Bag, people take it so literally, like if I wrote it about Nigwak,
Yeah. No,
but it's
they
not
they
at
missed the
all.
point. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all of New Brunswick.
Yeah.
Is totally, that's what that song's about. All basically everywhere outside of Moncton and St. John, moving to Moncton and St. John or Fredericton. And it's like everybody's reality. Everybody comes from one of those small towns. And it was just a really good rhyme. And I had come up with like, how about there's like no place to go dance anymore, nowhere to go eat.
Yeah.
And
Everything closes at 5:00.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
exactly.
that's still the case. Like that hasn't changed, and there's so many communities that are like that.
And it's like that song is one, like, no matter where we're playing it, if I'm in Quebec or or in Ontario or anywhere, everybody, at least one person after every show is like, man, you don't know what it means to me to hear that. This is, like, I'm from this place and there was one mine and it closed down and now there's just absolutely nothing there. And it's I think it's just like this really common thing happening in Canada where industries are changing and people are just migrating. It's changing. Like the pandemic has made a lot of people move to New Brunswick,
Yeah.
which is always funny for New Brunswickers to hear.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a song that means a lot to me too. It still makes me cry if I think about it too much.
Yeah, it totally has that for me. Like, toxic masculinity or whatever you want to call it. Like, it gives me a tear. It gives me a lump in my throat, especially like because like with me, like I know it's not like the literal Nigawak, being that the song is about, but just like my mom being from there and knowing that drive because I've done it so many times. Yeah, it's that must be quite the trip to have people that relate to that so much.
It is. It's cool, and it's a subject that I still I find myself writing about it all the time, and I have to, like, sometimes I'm like, Julie, you have to move on to another thought, and it's
Yeah.
hard for me to move on from
Yeah.
it because I decided to move back to the little town I grew up in. And I think more and more people are doing that kind of. They're like, they've lived in Moncton for a while and they're like, it's hectic, it's hard, it's
Yeah.
expensive. Let's, like, Camelton wasn't that bad. Why wouldn't I move back there? It's beautiful there, or wherever they're from originally.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a cool thing to, I think it, more people have to talk about it, and
Yeah,
we can
I
all
think,
relate for sure.
and the thing is, the reality is living in New Brunswick, you can drive an hour and a half, and you can get across like the province. Whereas if you're living
Hmm.
in a big city, you're driving an hour and a half, and you're only getting like 30, 40 kilometers from where you started. Like you've
For
barely
sure.
moved. So to live in like an area that's outside of the city, to drive to the city is not that big of a deal. Like if you
It's
compare
not.
it to like the commute that you would have in a big city where you want to, go and move out of your small town, like you don't realize how good it is to be in this province.
Especially like more and more people are self-employed or work like remotely from their home, or
Yeah.
it's not like no one, not everybody is like going to Moncton to work for Via Rail or Blue Cross or whatever. It's not really like a thing anymore where you have to live anywhere specific.
Mhm.
And that, it's time people realize that the rest of the province is beautiful and awesome, and
Yeah.
there's really cheap houses if you want to, live in one of those parts. And I think it's going to come back because, like these cities are going to be so full and overwhelmed that, people are just going to want to go back home, and they're going to want to be
Yeah.
like, it's okay. I can get everything I need in in Sackville and Miramichi or wherever you end up.
Yeah. Hey, that's where I am. Miramichi.
There you go.
Yeah. So, but yeah, and plus like I mean, with the pandemic and everything, like mental health, like being outside of those cities and the constant stress of it, like that really does play a factor in mental health. So being in the smaller communities is a help to that. Like, it's good to get away and to disconnect.
Definitely. Like so many times people and our label and just everybody assumed we would have moved to Montreal to do music. Everybody thinks like, when you reach a certain level, you don't stay in New Brunswick or you don't stay in Moncton.
Yeah.
And Viv, she moved there, but she had always, that was kind of like always a dream of hers. I think she would have done it either way.
Yeah.
But for me, like, we travel so much and I do spend a lot of time there that I realize like whenever I had a day off or a few days off on tour, I'd always be like, man, do I have time to drive to Monk? Like, do I have time to drive home and come back? Like, for
Yeah.
me to truly relax or to be well, to have time to like collect my thoughts, I realize I need to be in a rural part, and it's good for me to see my family,
Mhm.
and they all still live in Memram Cook. So
Yeah.
for me, it's been uh, really important to, I think, to keep doing music for 10 years. It's been really important for me to be in Memram Cook when I can, to, to truly disconnect, have time off, and just like, be unbothered.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally get it. Yeah. I moved
Hmm.
to St. John. Like my wife is from St. John, and we met here when in college, and so moved to there for a while, and then had our son, and then we moved back to Miramichi, where I'm from. Um, because there was a there was a job opportunity here, believe it or not, right? So we came back, and we've been here ever since. And I don't like I growing up, I always thought, oh, I got to get out of this crap place. Like it's
Right.
just, but then there comes a point where you realize that it it's home, and it's okay to be in a small community.
For
you
sure.
know
And it people always assume that, like rural places are, it's like small minded and it's closed and people are, and I find that's just like so I don't think that's relevant these days because people travel much more than they used to,
Mhm.
and people move from away, and it's not like I find like in Memram Cook, a lot of my neighbors aren't originally from there, and people are just more like, globalization is a thing. So
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah,
yeah, I think like even if I'm like in this small tiny Acadian community, I find it's really like no one is looking at me like I'm a weirdo.
yeah, right.
It's
Yeah,
yeah, and I am, but it's okay.
yeah, but exactly, it's okay. Like,
Yeah,
different strokes for different folks. It takes all kinds of people
right.
to make the world go around. Just be. I think the most important thing is just to be true to yourself, and to project, yourself out to the world, because that's when you're accepted, it truly means something, versus if you're putting something else out there that's fake, or that you want people to see, that isn't who you are, then you can never be yourself again, because you always have to be that.
Because people accept this version of you. You think that's how
Exactly.
you gotta be. For sure. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
totally, it's a thing. Absolutely.
Okay, so as I mentioned, the crash questions, I call them, because I'm a drummer, because that's my wheelhouse. So these are, I mean, they're not quick fire, but they're small questions. They're not like big existential change the world type things.
Okay.
So the first one is, do you prefer cake or pie?
Oh man, it's a big question to me. I don't know.
It's a tough, there's no wrong or right answer, but
Okay, cake.
cake. Okay, cool. I've been getting more cake lately. Yeah.
I mean, I'm considering cheesecake to be part of this category, so.
You're the second person to say that. See, cheesecake is kind of, I don't want to say it's cheating, but it does lend from both.
I
And
know.
it is definitely delicious. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're having a piece of cheesecake, is it a cup of coffee or a tea?
Coffee.
Yeah.
Oh, all the time, all day long, nighttime, daytime, coffee, coffee, coffee.
Is it black, or you put stuff in it?
Mostly black, but sometimes a little bit of milk.
Okay, right on. So what's a must have, like when because you're going to be leaving on tour, what's the main thing that you have to have packed?
Main thing.
Yeah, what can't you go without on tour?
I mean, I've learned to go without everything because you always forget
I suppose, yeah.
everything you want. But if I'm really smart, and this is classic Julie, is like I have like a bag of activities. I'm like truly a child. I always have like stuff to knit, to crochet. I have like a coloring book. I got a normal book. I have, I always have a bunch of shit. I'm always like have a poetry writing book. I'm
Okay.
always doing something.
Word finds, crosswords.
Yeah.
Do you ever bring like those travel board games, like the Trouble, like where you can do the pop thing with the dice?
I don't have those, but we always have games. We like our thing now, instead of going into a bar every night after the gig, we will play some sort of card game in the hotel room with like a box of wine or something. We're really into Skip-Bo.
Yep.
Skip-Bo
Okay.
has been going on for a few years, and it's like it's a big thing.
Okay. Like, do you have like
Big deal.
tournaments?
Yeah, I guess,
Like
yeah.
like
Yeah,
elimination games?
yeah, sort of, yeah.
Last man standing. Yeah.
So yeah, we're into cards, play cards.
Okay. So what would be your favorite movie of all time?
Back to the Future.
Oh, nice. Do you like the first one, or like just the whole series?
I mean, the whole series is fantastic. I really like 1 and 3.
Mm-hmm. So people usually ask, like, what's your desert island disc, right? Like, what's the one album you can't live without? But I'm going to put a bit of a spin on that. So if you had one CD stuck in your car, which one do you not want it to be?
Oh, okay. Like Sublime.
Oh, you can't stand Sublime.
I don't know. I don't know why. I just, I can tolerate a lot of stuff, but I'm just like so done with Sublime.
Okay, just because you've heard it so much?
I guess, and like people cover it and like they do terrible covers. It's just such like an era and like such a vibe.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't like it. I don't like it. I'm against it.
That's not what I would expect to hear, but that's a great answer. Oh, that's great. Last question, and I don't mean to keep going on the whole food thing, but this is a topic that comes up every once in a while in your songs, mostly in the Hey Babies, I think. Yeah. Is the poutine. There's a couple songs where you make reference to poutine. So where's the best poutine?
The best one I've ever had is in a convenience store in Quebec City,
Okay.
which
Did
is
you
crazy.
find it again?
Oh, I have it every time I go.
Okay. So
It's like high
it
on my
wasn't,
agenda.
yeah, it
For
wasn't
like in
some
Quebec City, I'm
random.
like,
Okay.
oh no, it's not random. It's well documented for us.
Okay.
I mean, Catherine is like, she's saying the best poutine in the world was in, I think, Dalhousie or wherever she grew up, or maybe
Okay.
was it Bathurst? It doesn't exist anymore, so we can't confirm this. But
Okay.
yeah,
So
she's really
it hasn't
adamant.
been Julie approved. So
No, but it was called Chez Lucien, and there's a whole song about that.
yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. I can't. Yeah, I'm not saying it's true. I don't know.
Okay. Doesn't have the seal of approval.
No.
All right. Well, that's all the questions I had. So that was good. Sublime.
Great.
That's good.
And I'm like, if I think about it more, there's definitely stuff I truly actually hate. But
Yeah.
just when it comes to mine, oh my gosh, I hate Sublime.
That's great. That's fine. Oh, that's awesome.
Hacky
Yeah.
sacks. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, cool. So yeah, thank you so much for I know I just kind of messaged you out of the blue
No
to come
problem.
on.
It was a pleasure.
I really appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to the next solo album and whenever the Hey
Thank
Babies
you.
put another album out. Wish you all the best on tour, and this has been a treat. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, there it is. Julie was such a great chat. Thank you again for being on the podcast. As of the release of this episode, you can still catch the Hey Babies on the road. There's a few more dates before they take a quick pause and then hit the road again for the second half of March. So you can find all their tour information on their social media sites, which I will have linked in the description. So if they do come to a place near you, go see them. It's an awesome show. So that's it for this week. As usual, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and be kind to one another. Let's make this a better place for everybody. All right. Bye.